just to let you know, while I am going to be talking about violent topics such as snuff films, abuse, and advertising, I won't be showing any except for the last one on screen. Thanks for watching. When most people think of the 70s and film, they think of The Godfather, Star Wars, Jaws, and if you're of a particular type, Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I, on the other hand, think of films like The Vampire Lovers, Mr. No Legs, I Spit on Your Grave, and, Star Wars. The biggest difference between the former and latter examples, Star Wars excluded, along with budget, popularity, and target audiences, is the former are considered art, while the latter is a product. Something like Godfather has themes, symbolisms, effort put into the acting, and is granted acclaim for these. Films like Mr. No Legs has none of that, at least on the face of it. Exploitation films, as they're called, due to their exploitation of trending topics, explicit content, and niches, paired usually with exploitative on-set behavior. These films are made with money in mind, not ideas, and so they usually go unnoticed by mainstream audiences nowadays. They're either considered weird films for weird people or relics of the past, but having seen quite a few of these films for myself, I can say that they are not devoid of ideas. They aren't full of them, exactly, but as all art is political and all created things are art, there's something to be said about these films. Take Snuff, 1976, for example. Originally filmed under the title Slaughter in Argentina in 1971 during the military junta of, I forgot to look up how to pronounce this guy's name, one second. Alejandro Agustin Lanús. And maybe it got a release in that year too, it's debatable. The film capitalized off the only 2-year-old Manson family murders by being about a charismatic cult leader of hot babes that went around killing under his orders, including a pregnant actress, because it's literally just a fictional retelling of the events. It's a bit hard to compare this to modern day because true crime podcasts and YouTubers capitalize off violent killings as soon as they happen. So for a more modern analog, imagine if, I don't know, Far Cry 5 was literally about the occupation of the Mahler National Wildlife Refuge that occurred 2 years prior to the game instead of simply inspired by it. I haven't played Far Cry 5, I don't know. Anyway, the film Slaughter is not a good movie. It's very funny by accident due to its poor dubbing.
I want to make love to you.
Good. I've always thought the profession of butcher is an honorable one. What would we do without...
But even without that, the film is paced strangely and often contains scenes that communicate little. Like many exploitation films, it starts with a semi-related violent incident to draw the viewer in, much like modern YouTube videos. Then the focus shifts to the main characters. Then you see a ton, and I mean a shitload, of nothing going on at all. The film's poor pacing is emblematic of runtime inflation, which was common even back then. The plot of the film is not very well constructed. It adds random scenes of violence to remind you it's a horror movie every so often because the actually engaging romantic side of the plot makes the movie feel less scary than probably intended. There's also way too much stock footage of Carnival, the Catholic festival. It gets quite distracting. While the film isn't very well made, the very nature of horror and a recent events-based plot means the story reveals some kernels of where the fear comes from. I mean, as silly as it is to name your main villain after Satan.
But I always want to be with you, Satan.
No one can be with me always.
It says a lot about the makers and the target audience. The devil is scary, the devil is evil, God is the only antidote, that kind of thing. Predominantly Christian country, you know.
What name did you just call upon?
Christ! Jesus Christ!
Give me a couple of minutes and I'm going to plunge this knife into your heart and cut it from your body. Who do you call on now? Who's the only one who can save you from my knife?
Satan!
The ideology of Satan, the character, Satan, I guess how it, whatever. The ideology of Satan isn't quite as mythical or racist as Charles Manson. However, this goes to show how little of his ideas got absorbed in the public consciousness. No, instead Satan is obsessed with controlling women, having himself worshipped, and a belief in power and ritual sacrifice.
I will change men's destiny. First, we will get rid of this marsh. After he is dead, the two of them will create the victim for my sacrifice.
That's how the Manson killings were viewed, as a charismatic cult leader with delusions of grandeur and arcane, unsympathetic motives. Something you'll notice if you watch the film is every time a character begs for their life and they're about to be murdered, they say something along the lines of, "Take all my money, just don't hurt me." But the killers don't want money. Ideology drives the killer, not material wants, and that is scary in a predominantly white world where you wouldn't have expected to be attacked for any other reason than to get robbed. In one interesting scene, Satan yells at an arms dealer for being an opportunist. He thinks killers are noble, but despises those who profit off of it. An interesting opinion for the villain of a slasher film to take.
I've always thought the profession of butcher is an honorable one. What would we do without...
They have chosen the profession that is beneficial to us all. They slaughter and chop up their victims so that the rest of us may have the wherewithal to live. From them we get life. But the man that sells him the knife he uses to slash the dumb animal's throat does nothing but profit from the blood that is spilled.
You can ask what the butcher would do without the knife.
That indeed would be terrible. Mankind would starve. No, we need those knives. Just as we need undertakers for the dead. Just as the carcass of a bull on the pampas need jackals. But I, for one, do not like jackals!
So, you don't like jackals?
If you're not picking up the political implications of a serial murderer character telling an arms dealer he is a jackal, and there is no honor in selling weapons versus using them, I don't know what to tell you other than go back to school and do your homework or you won't get dessert after dinner. And of course, there's the obvious use of fear in the ending, where the Manson family, Satan's gang, get into the main character's home to kill them, emulating the fear of having your own private home being no longer safe. It's not a very smart film, but it plays on genuine fears of the time and societal norms in a way that still holds up to this day because nothing has systematically changed since 1971 other than the internet making things worse. But what's the difference between Slaughter and Snuff? Well, in 1976, the film was released with a newly produced ending depicting some of the presumably but not obviously the same staff of Slaughter making a Snuff film. The meta alternate ending is genuinely a fun advancement of the medium of a horror movie, but this too was made out of a kernel of a genuine fear. Ironically, one of the first hypothetical Snuff films was related to the Manson family, with rumors going around that they filmed a murder. It's uncertain if this is true, the film has never been found, but the rumor still carried with it a reputation. With special effects in film getting more and more realistic, the fear that you were watching a literal murder became a paranoid vision of the movie theater, which only escalated with the rise of home video. To that end, Snuff was released under the plausibly deniable notion that the murders contained within may have been real. The marketing and fears around the idea were so strong, despite the film's obvious use of special effects, if you know what to look for, that the creators were investigated by the New York District Attorney at the time, Robert Morgenthau. They obviously found no wrongdoing, but the fact that an investigation was started at all is telling. This cheap junk of a film played into fear strong enough to warrant investigation. If that's not art, then what is? There's another element of the Snuff release that I should talk about that bugs me, more so than watering down Charles Manson to a mere satanic caricature. The film was released with the tagline, quote, "a film that could only be made in South America where life is cheap," end quote. This was playing into xenophobic fears that the world outside the Empire's borders is a deadly place, and that films such as this one were made with actual murders for entertainment. I'm sure this contributed to the feeling that it was a genuine Snuff film, where the racist American mind saw a South American movie depicting a murder has to be real. For all the ways the movie communicates genuine fears of the time, this one is the most ignorant, but again speaks to the creators and audience that this tagline worked. Finally, I want to focus on an element of the film, specifically the Slaughter portion of it, that is a little more positive. The film has what I would consider a semi-feminist moral to it. It's a bit vague in how it's presented, but I think it's still there. One of the girls describes how she was always abused, and she always hated it, and so she would settle for an abuser like Satan.
Being your servant is, in a way, freedom.
I demand more than anyone else could. How can you call that freedom?
It's what I want. I've chosen it, I want it, and I'm happy.
You are happy then? In bondage?
Ever since I was a little girl, I've always been in bondage. Since then, I never once have had real independence. I've always been dependent on men, and now on you. All my life I've been in bondage of one kind or another. I'm not saying I like it, I have to have it.
Something genuinely understood from the Manson family by this film was that Manson wasn't using magic to brainwash his victims. He was taking advantage of women who were already victims by promising an escape. It may surprise you to hear Slaughter was co-created by a woman, Roberta Findlay, who did cinematography and voice dubbing for one of the characters. Her Wikipedia page says she also directed the film, but the film's page doesn't say that. I don't know who to believe here, but in any case, the film had a much more empathetic view towards the killer biker girls that kiss than you would expect for a film like this. Usually I would end the video here, but I feel like the message of my essays tend to get missed since I don't spell it out for the babies in the room, so here's that for you. This is not to say Snuff or Slaughter are some kind of masterpiece theater. They're bad films at the end of the day. My point is, rather, that bad films can still say a lot about the people making them and the people that they were made for. Exploitation films, especially horror films, relay loads of cultural information in this way that I could have picked any example. Snuff just happened to be the film I watched most recently.